to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ. Let me try that again. It is the BJ Show. My mouth is frozen. I'm sorry, John. You know, it's cold out there. Today's date, it is February 19th. How did it get to be the 19th already? Is that right? February 19th?
Yeah, it's just flying by, isn't it, Brett? It's like the snowflakes this morning and the school closing. They're just flying by.
Just flying by. And this is the A block, which means we started right off the top of the hour. If you're listening live, you know what time it is. You know what date it is. But the reason we include that in the beginning of each one of our segments, at least if I remember, because of the fact if you're listening into the future, you can reference that. Oh, okay, I know what happened on that date. You can say, oh, those guys, they were all wrong. Things didn't turn out like they said it would. And then you can make fun of us. But that's why we do it for reference, because we stand up to what we say. When I say things, it's the honest to God truth. Never will I ever say anything about the fact that my favorite radio station is KFAV. I will never say anything improper or it's not, literally deeply rooted in my soul. You know what I'm saying, John?
I thought it was KFUO. I thought you had a meeting about that tomorrow, about you were thinking about giving them your official endorsement. In fact, you said you wanted it to be the case where anywhere in the continental North America where you drove, you could listen to 104.5. They have that right, don't they, Brad?
Yes, they do, but I don't think they're going to go along with that. And by the way, my big radio meeting is today, and I got a feeling the person I'm supposed to have lunch with is going to cancel. But not me, because I got FWD, and I will go, I will go wherever, and the cold doesn't slow me down. Well, maybe a little bit, but anyway, we start the show off with this guy. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what he does is he counts down the top 3 John Combest stories. Now, John normally in his website, johncombest.com, has dozens of articles on there about things going on in the state of Missouri that you should know. But we distill it down to the top 3. And who judges those?
I'm Casey Kasem.
No, it's John Combest. He's the guy that judges them. Okay, we start off with...
In third place...
Follow up to a story that we talked about 2 weeks ago. A Missourian who you and I are well acquainted with, Ed Martin, has gotten the permanent nomination. Before he was just interim, but now it's the official nomination to be U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. President Donald Trump wrote, since Inauguration Day, Ed has been doing a great job as interim U.S. Attorney, fighting tirelessly to restore law and order and make our nation's capital safe and beautiful again. He will get the job done. Now, you're going to be surprised by this as a fan of NPR, Brad. But NPR has a story up today, and they're not too happy about it. They don't like the fact that Ed Martin's back. This is by a woman named Carrie Johnson. Her headline that was adapted for KCUR says, Trump picked a top federal prosecutor with Missouri ties and who defended January 6th rioters. So, Brad, I, for one, am apoplectic about the fact that someone who suggested that the January 6th rioters were not a bunch of treasonous bums. I'm wildly offended that a guy like that would get a nomination from Donald Trump. Aren't you? Tell me you're with me on this, Brad.
You know what? Attorneys have cases that they handle that are not necessarily their personal views. And especially if you go into certain areas of the law like public defenders. Okay, I know several public defenders, at least used to be, and I think I still know one of them is still practicing. And once again, they get cases that they know the people they're defending are just literally slime bags, but that's their job. They're there to, our constitutional system has set that up. That's why, when you get the Miranda rights, if you don't have an attorney, they will appoint one for you because they want you to have a fair day in court, whether or not the attorney is with you or not. It's their job to defend someone who is being accused. So why is Ed Martin being branded this way? I think that's sad for him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. And here's the thing. No matter who Donald Trump would have put in that position, if that person didn't come out and say, everybody that showed up on January 6th should be thrown in the clink, the folks at NPR and other news outlets, to be fair, would be unfair and would say that, this is another example of Trump covering for his people, whatever. To me, again, there's a lot of people in Missouri there's some people in Missouri that weren't crazy about Ed Martin for whatever Republican political reason or whatever. But I think it's great to see him in a position like this.
Do you know him personally? I mean, I ask you, see, here, for your listeners, John knows everybody. And if I say, hey, do you know Ed Martin personally? John's going to say, no, never met him before. And then he's going to text Ed, hey, Brad just asked about you. I pretend I don't know you. This is John Combat.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a stretch. Yeah, I don't think Ed would be upset if I said that I've known. Yeah, and I mentioned before, I knew Ed when he was an attorney at Bryan Cave before he ever got involved in any sort of political thing.
That's right.
Yeah, he was at Bryan. He went to SLU Law School. And so I met him in the early 2000s. And I remember between us, Brad, I was surprised when he got so involved like in the Blunt administration and everything, because I viewed Ed as just a conservative guy, a great guy who was an attorney. And I was like, dude, he's going to like do a political job? That seems strange for Ed. And then, of course, I mean, he goes on to do a ton of political jobs. But anyway, I'm biased. I'm biased toward Ed because I know him and I haven't talked to him in a long time. But
John,
he was always good to me and I liked him. Yeah.
I have an issue with what you just said. You just said,
what's that, Brad?
In the same sentence, you said Bryan Cave and St. Louis University law graduate. Those two are mutually not agreeable because of the fact that all the silk stocking law firms in the city of St. Louis do not hire SLU grads. They only hire Wash U grads.
Oh, I mean, if that were true, that would be hilarious, and that should be on the Wash U. Now, is that a talking point from your daughter, Brad?
Well, that's a talking point from a lot of attorneys in St. Louis who tell the story that if you graduate from Wash U, that gives you a plus, and if you graduate from SLU, that gives you a minus.
Yeah, well, hold on, and I don't mean to be. It's going to be hard for me to say this in a way that doesn't seem uppity, but I don't think. Listen, I'm not a law school guy. I didn't go to law school. Your daughter went to Wash U Law School. Wash U as an undergraduate school is not in the same category as St. Louis University. Like, I mean, that would, there's no way to say that, Brad, other than, I mean, that's just a fact, right?
Well,
like SLU is not in the same, like Flow Valley is not in the same category as, say Mizzou. They just do different things.
So are you saying that SLU is less than Washington University undergraduate-wise?
I say that there's wonderful people. Some of my best friends went to SLU, Brad. I would just say that, I mean, objectively, SLU is not in the same solar system as Wash U.
Okay, so John, here's the ultimate question. You're doing political dance there. If you were in HR and two people came to you and one graduated from Wash U and the other let me rephrase that. One graduated from SLU and the other one graduated from 270 Tech, Florissant Valley. Which would you hire?
That question is irrelevant because I wouldn't look at their university status. I would look at whoever went to the Earl Scheib School of Quarter Panel Repair.
Okay, on to number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
I include a story in number 2 from the Kansas City Star because we will see a paint-by-numbers approach like this story over and over again for years. That's why I bring it up to you, Brad. This story is brought to us by a gentleman named Jonathan Shorman, and he's a progressive guy from the Kansas City Star. He covers a lot of state government here in Missouri, and he also has a really good knowledge of stuff going on the federal level. He profiles the devastation brought on by the Trump administration in leveling out the playing field, aka eliminating specific DEI grants. There is a farmer's market in Kansas City called the Ivanhoe Neighborhood Council. They run a farmer's market, and they've done it. It doesn't say in the story for how many years they've done it, but they've done it for a few years, and they operate at a loss, Brad. They're a farmer's market, right? Probably hard for them to make a profit, I guess. They have nearly 30 people that come out for the farmer's market, and the Biden administration had handed them a grant. $165,000 over the next 3 years, apparently starting this year in 2025. Now, they got the grant, Brad, because they help those poor people that are food insecure. It's not their fault they go buy grape soda and Red Hot Riplets. No. They would buy kale and make smoothies if they could. But there's just not enough farmers markets in the urban area. So Ivanhoe was going to get 165 grand for 3 years to help, set up their tables. Maybe get an awning to cover the tables in case it's really hot out there. And guess what? The Trump administration said, nope, you're not getting 165 grand for 3 years just because you're black. And maybe you can subsidize some collard greens that Uncle Elmer grows with his sawed-off leg because he couldn't say no to sugary food. Anyway, this story by Jonathan Shorman is about how sad it is. And you know what? This is just the tip of the iceberg of what's happening as Donald Trump eliminates DEI. Now, I don't think, Brad, that farmers markets should have to operate at a profit. I think you and I and every other taxpayer should subsidize every farmer's market. It could be, the Niedring houses up off Larimore Road. It could be anywhere in the United States. The Thiel farm. Why aren't we subsidizing every farm, Brad? Farmers shouldn't have to make a profit. Community gardens shouldn't have to make a profit. So I bring it up again because this Jonathan Shorman piece is the type of paint-by-number stuff. You got some poor minority. He's going to tell a sob story. And the bad guy is always Donald Trump. And you know what, Brad? I love it. Cut all their stupid funding.
Wow, John. Mince words, don't you?
I mean, the worst part about this, and here's the thing. I'm not really picking on Shorman because, to be honest, even though he's progressive, he's pretty thorough. By the way, he's the guy that brought us the hero's tale over the weekend of the first abortion in Missouri since the ban was lifted. Isn't it magical that we're now committing infanticide? It's beautiful, Brad. Anyway, I'm not picking on Shorman, but now every mouth-breathing reporter is going to say, I wonder if there's a grant in my neighborhood that I could write about and say Donald Trump is killing people. It's just a paint-by-numbers journalism thing, Brad.
Okay, now he's a mouth breather. Is he also a knuckle dragger, John?
Oh, no, Shorman's not. I'm just talking about the fictional hypothetical reporter. Yeah, I don't know if he'd be a knuckle dragger. Now, Brad, he might have gone to an elite school like St. Louis University that's ranked in the top 7,000 schools in America. So he might not be a knuckle dragger.
Okay. We move on to number one.
The number one.
Yesterday was President's Day, and it reminds us that America does not have a king. We don't have a king in this country, Brad. Despite what Donald Trump and Elon Musk have to say about it, there's no king. We have a few stories up today. One is from KMIZ, they're the TV station in Mizzou, and they traveled all the way to Jefferson City because there was a protest on High Street and some beautiful images, a video there. It was pretty much what you would expect from an anti-Trump rally. It was a lot of old people, fat women. But to their credit, they got a few dozen people out, and the weather was super cold yesterday. So credit to them for turning out that many people. Most of the signs were about Elon Musk, actually even more than Donald Trump, at least from my viewing of the video. And then also a piece from the Columbia Missourian I'd highlight by someone named Tierney Kugel. And this Tierney Kugel highlights that Democrats, I shouldn't say Democrats, Mizzou Young Democratic Socialists, Mizzou Young Democratic Socialists of America. So the socialist group and some other people like Mizzou Students for Justice in Palestine, they put together a rally and they held signs and did a little march and stuff about how Donald Trump shouldn't be trying to deport people. They started chanting and I think they were chanting in Spanish about deportation and how we must oppose deportation. I bring this up because my favorite quote is from one of the organizers, and she was talking about the negative effects that Donald Trump has had on everyone. And she says that after Donald Trump started signing executive orders, she says, quote, I found myself doom scrolling social media every night with a sick feeling in my stomach. Don't you love that, Brad? Instead of a young woman saying, when I scroll social media, I get a little anxiety, a little fear. I don't feel great about what's going on. So I set my phone down and I do something else. No, let's keep doom scrolling and then blame Donald Trump. That's personal responsibility. So if you want to see a bunch of old fat broads and a bunch of angry Mexican students, go to my website today and read the protest stories.
Once again, for you listeners out there, John is being very politically correct when he talks about women this morning, as he always is, very respectful of women of all shapes and sizes. Right, John?
Now, you will like, Brad, there was a BBW that was featured in the Columbia story, and she's got some wacky glasses on. And it reminds me of your observation about John Chapman's glasses yesterday. Like, this BBW has they're very thick, like white framed glasses. It's hard to describe them. You would know probably better than me how to describe them. But I thought, maybe it's a thing. Maybe for people, no matter what your political bent, if you're a woman, maybe the attention-grabbing thing now is not something silicone or not Botox. Maybe you enhance your face with big frame glasses.
We talked about that yesterday for people who didn't listen. Dawn Chapman, who is what is her Moms for STL? What's her group name? Is that what it is?
Just Moms STL. Yeah.
Just Moms STL, who's done a very good job of bringing attention to the Manhattan Project pollution. And those of you who, when I say Manhattan Project pollution, probably say, "No, hold on a minute now. I saw that movie. I saw that movie, and that was all out in New Mexico or something." No, they made a lot of the uranium right here in St. Louis, and they dumped the waste out there at the airport, and it's still there for the most part. There's a picture of her on the stlpr.org website, and in my opinion, she's a very attractive woman who has unflattering glasses, and that seems to be the trend of a lot of women, where they wear these crazy thick frame glasses, and I don't understand it. I don't understand it. Because,
you know what it does, Brad? It's a screening mechanism, because all of the horrible superficial men that don't like birth control glasses, it screens them out. And then they only get the men that really love them for who they are, their political opinions, their opinions about Coldwater Creek,
Okay. Here you go again. I laugh because one of our favorite listeners brought up the fact that I forgot about that birth control glasses, which was a military term, an Army term.
BCGs.
Yeah, BCGs. That's where they were called. If you went into the service, I guess they probably still do that, but I think they're probably using different kinds of glasses. But if you went into the service back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and even I believe even through the 80s, and you had glasses, you could not wear your normal civilian glasses, your civvy glasses. You had to have the official military issued glasses, which were ugly as hell, and that's why they were called birth control glasses, because if you wore them as a soldier and a male, this is, I wonder if the women have to wear theirs too. You know what? Think about that for a minute. I just came up with a new idea.
What's that?
Instead of having all this hubbub about abortions, what the state of Missouri should do is all women, and John would go along with this because he's always talking about women of ovulating ages, all women of ovulating ages would be required to wear birth control glasses. That way there wouldn't be need for any abortions, because no women would get impregnated, because, the guy would come up to her at a bar and she'd turn around, she'd have those big ugly oh, sorry, I thought you were somebody else. See, that would just end the whole thing. No more abortions.
No, I think some men, and I might be projecting here, but might take it as a challenge. Like, how hard would I have to go to knock the glasses off?
See, here's my other thing. I think outside the box. How do you bring abortions down to zero? If the Republicans were smart, here's what they do. They're saying, we're going to eliminate abortions in the state of Missouri because we're going to declare sex between men and women illegal. And anyone who conceives a baby is going to be thrown in jail, because we don't want to have any abortions in St. Louis or in the entire state of Missouri. So if you have nobody getting pregnant, there's no abortions, right?
I just think that the legacy of Phyllis Schlafly clearly lives on in your voice right now, Brad. I mean, the time that you served as her producer for A Magical Day really affected you.
I was her co-host, John. I was her producer. I was on the air with her, talking back and forth with her on the Bot Radio Network. And I think that network was crazy at the time. I think they had 450 stations.
I remember meeting, was it Dick Bot that owned that?
Yeah, I don't know if Dick's still alive. His son runs it now. But, once again, here we got a situation.
Once again.
I'm sorry, I keep using that. their model is broken. I don't know how they're, I guess they're still getting donations and things like that, but their bread and butter was they would play all the, all the holy roller ministers and stuff like that would send their tapes to the bot network, and they would play them, and of course they would charge for that, but nobody does that anymore because of the fact that all the churches have their own websites and all their own streaming channels and stuff like that. Okay, enough of radio stuff.
Well, and yeah, I know we're over time, but real quick, you probably didn't know this. I don't know if she brought it up on the podcast, but Dick Bott told me this, is that she got the title of her book from her gynecologist.
Can I tell you?
Did you know that?
No, I'm not going to touch that one. Okay, can I tell you an interesting little story? Mark Reardon told me this one time. Not told me, he told this on the air. Mark Reardon, the afternoon guy, 97.1. He worked, I think one of his first paying jobs was he worked at KSIV, which is one of the bot stations here in St. Louis. And I think it's Dick's son was listening, and he called up the program director and said, "Fire that guy. He sounds like burnt toast." So to this day, what does burnt toast mean? To this day, Mark Reardon talks about the fact that he started his career being accused of sounding like burnt toast. Now, I guess that's one of the...
If that story is true, it's very funny.
Well, it is true if you don't believe it. I mean,
Mark, just because Mark Reardon says that somebody said that.
Well, no. It was. I think it's Dick Bott Senior, Dick Bott Junior. I can't remember, but that was the deal. He didn't like him because he sounded like burnt toast. Now, and Mark, at the time, when you say something like that, you're talking about sounds like burnt toast. Does that mean like when you crunch it, it like is crunchy sounding? You know what I mean?
It's not very clear what he means
right,
by that.
Exactly.
Maybe it's just it sounds like something that you would want to spit out right away.
Well, when you say someone's voice and you put in a food, if you say something like, "Wow, the guy's voice is like honey," you go like, "Ooh, he's got a smooth, sexy voice." You know what I mean? Or the guy sounds like a chainsaw. He's got a raspy voice. But how does burnt toast equate to a sound? I don't quite understand that. Okay, we'll take a break.